Hey there, it's BoardGameDave, and today we're taking a look at a cell biology game called Cytosis from Genius Games. In this game, we're going to be shrunk down and teleported to inside of a living cell where we're going to be collecting lipids and carbohydrates and proteins and mRNA and using those molecules and transporting them through the various organelles inside of the cell to create hormones, enzymes, receptors, etc., all in an attempt to gain the most health, and the player who has the most health at the end of the game wins. Let's go to the table. I'll give you a quick rundown of the rules, and then we'll come back and I'll share some thoughts I have about the game. All right, here we are taking a look at the two-player side of the board for Cytosis. Now, the other side has a few more action spaces, but essentially the game plays the same way. In Cytosis, players are going to take turns, starting with the first player who has this token, placing their flasks out into various parts of the cell to complete different actions. You might go somewhere to gain resources, mRNA in this case. You might come here to get lipids. Later on, right, as you move around clockwise, you're going to end up going here to do steroid hormone synthesis or alcohol detox. So if you're synthesizing something, you're going to put your little vesicle there and load it up with different macromolecules. So here you can load up your vesicle with lipids, for example, right? Over here, the pink player might want to come down to the rough ER to turn mRNA into proteins. So let's say they have 3 black cubes, they can convert those into red because they're trying to complete this steroid hormone receptor, right? On blue's turn, they head to the Golgi apparatus, they bring this vesicle down to here, they load it up with a missing carbohydrate, and then eventually they want to come down here to the plasma membrane for exocytosis to complete this steroid hormone. You'll notice that we've got the required macromolecules. They get spent. You gain points down here. There's also ATP you need to spend as well. That's spending energy is one of the resources in this game as well, are these little ATP tokens. Over here, pink player is trying to get down to the Golgi apparatus to load this up with some lipids from their supply naturally, and then they want to come down here, but these spaces are blocked, and of course that's a big part of this game too. Being a worker placement game, you can only go where the spaces are open. So let's say on a different round, they make it down here, they spend those macromolecules to complete this steroid hormone receptor. Now, what I do like about these receptors is on future turns, right? If another player completes a steroid hormone on their turn, you, the red player or pink player, gains 2 points. And if they do that themselves, they gain a point. So this is a nice way to get immediate points and ongoing points as well, right? There's also enzymes that are a little bit easier to complete. So you can do that, get some ATP, get some health. This is a set collection thing here. So the more different types you have, you can score more points at the end of the game. Beyond that, you can also gain more of those cards down here. Leftmost one is free. You spend more ATP for the ones to the right of those. These will wipe at the end of each round. A couple other spaces we didn't mention as well. You can turn ATP down here into carbohydrates. You can do more conversion things here. Before your turn, you can also spend 4 ATP to place a neutral flask to take that action, which can be very, very helpful, getting some resources, etc. This is a place where you can also go to claim the first player marker and get an ATP or complete a goal. Now, we didn't talk about that, but there's going to be goals over here. First person who completes it gains 3 points. That can give you immediate points, but also they'll give you extra points at the end of the game if you have your token there. I think that covers the basic gist of the actions on the board. Beyond that, endgame scoring is leftover resources. You're going to look at everyone's alcohol detoxification cards, see how much ATP they spent. The player who spent the most gets 8 points, then 5, then 2. You're also going to look at those enzymes. Again, you're looking for different color-coded enzymes to complete different sets. That can give you a lot of points. There's also the goal cards we mentioned. They'll give you endgame points as well. And then that takes you to the final score. Whoever has the most health as tracked around the board wins. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention are these event cards up here. So at the end of each round, after all the flasks have been placed, you're going to reveal a event card. Now, this can add resources to certain action spaces, add ATP, it can increase the cost of certain things, it can make things cheaper, so on and so forth. So each round is going to start essentially with some sort of change to the board state just to keep it interesting and exciting. So That's what these event cards are for. But otherwise, that should be everything essentially you need to know to get a basic understanding of how to play Cytosis. And that's a quick overview of how to play Cytosis. Now let's go through my 7-point criteria for how I rate games, starting with art and components. Now, artwork-wise, it's vibrant, it's colorful, it pops, it's scientifically accurate and educational, which I really appreciate. And the components are certainly functional. I like the little flasks that you place. You've got the cubes, you've got the first player token. Cards are pretty nice quality, they're printed well. And again, the artwork on the cards is nice and functional as well. It's nothing over the top, it's not extraordinarily fancy, but it definitely works. And I give it a 7.5 for art and components. Second is complexity versus audience. Now the box does say ages 10 and up, and I do feel like this game would be somewhat over complex for your average 10-year-old, depending on their familiarity with worker placement games, order fulfillment games, or just modern board games in general. I don't think the average 10-year-old is going to kind of click with a game that's got this level of complexity, but, for the older kids, middle school, definitely by high school, I think this would be a good fit. So if you're expecting, a modern worker placement game, you're fine, but I don't know if you're thinking this is a kid's game, I don't think it's quite there. I'll give it an 8 out of 10 for complexity versus the audience. Second is thematic integration, and this is where, again, Genius Games just knocks it out of the park. This is what they're really, really good at. You take these really kind of high-flying, concepts like the Golgi apparatus and the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, if I remember correctly, all these macromolecules and lipids and proteins and all this stuff you'd see in a cell textbook, and they weave it seamlessly into a functional, fun, engaging, educational game. And I think that's so impressive the way they do this. It really does not get any better as far as, again, a game that stays true to the scientific accuracy and the theme while making a fun game. They don't compromise. You can learn so much from this game, and I really, really appreciate that they are able to incorporate themes so naturally and organically into a game like this. So I give it a 10 out of 10 for thematic integration. Amazing job there. Number 4 is intuitive mechanics, and overall this game is fairly intuitive. Again, if you're familiar with worker placement games, order fulfillment games, there's kind of a intuitive flow of this game of acquiring your resources and then working your way through this chain to finally end up producing that enzyme, hormone, whatever. There are some scientifically accurate, but unfortunately fiddly and unintuitive parts of this game. Just a few. One of them, for example, is at this free ribosome space, you can convert as many mRNAs into proteins as you like, whereas at the Golgi apparatus, this is letting you place a carbohydrate or lipid onto your little cell transport disk. Even though the icons are almost exactly the same, it looks like you're converting something here, but again, it's a spending, placing onto your vesicle, stuff like that. There's a few tiny little fiddly, unintuitive things that might trip you up the first, 1 or 2 plays, but overall, very intuitive. I give it an 8 out of 10. Fifth is replayability, and I have to dock the game a little bit here because there's just not much baked into this game inherently to make it very replayable or to increase the longevity of it. There are these event cards that are going to change things up every round, but there's only 12 in the whole box, and even in a 2-player game, you're going to see 10 of these, so the vast bulk of them. So I could see how after several plays, you've sort of seen everything the game has to offer, and it could start to feel a little bit stale and repetitive is my worry. Now, there is the virus expansion available as well, but I don't have it. I haven't experienced anything. So for the base game alone, replayability, I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Again, just not too much to explore after your first initial plays is my initial impression. Sixth is length and fun factor. And while I do feel like Cytosis is fairly fun throughout, I wonder if it does overstay its welcome just a tad. Now, a 2-player game takes us about an hour to play through, which is not terribly long, but toward the end of the game, the actions can start to feel a little bit repetitive. You're kind of going through the same motions, placing your cubes and moving them down the chain. There are events, of course, that change things up a little bit per round, but beyond that, there's no real change in pace or flow to the game at all. So it might be a little bit long depending on your taste, but I do find it's fairly fun throughout, but maybe a little bit long. I give it a 7 out of 10 10 for length and fun factor. And finally, cost versus value. Now, I'm seeing this game available for about $45 online, which, to be honest, seems a little bit pricey just based on the components that you're going to get inside the box. That being said, again, this is a very informative, educational, scientifically accurate game, and if you value that, sort of educational, weaving in of the theme, as I was mentioning earlier, then that might, increase the subjective value for you. But just based on price and components alone, it's a little bit pricey. I give it a 7.5 out of 10. And before I reveal my final score for Cytosis, I just want to say that with a game like this, it's really all going to come down to whether or not this theme clicks for you. If you find cell biology absolutely boring and totally uninteresting, you're probably not going to enjoy Cytosis, naturally. That being said, if you value educational games, if you have a son or daughter who's in AP Bio, or if you have a coworker or gaming buddy or relative who's a biologist or something like that, right? I could easily see this becoming their new favorite game, because there are not many games that handle this theme with as much scientific accuracy and rigor, and weaving it into a fun, interesting kind of board game. So it's all about the theme here and whether or not you value learning something as you play games. Now, the average score for Cytosis is a 7.7 out of 10. I'm going to go ahead and round that up to an 8 out of 10, because I do personally very much value learning something when I play a game. It kind of combines two of my passions, learning and board gaming, and I always appreciate that in games. If you're interested, by the way, in learning more about another Genius Games game, I have one called Genotype right here. I'll be reviewing very, very soon. Hopefully my next game I review. It's all about Mendelian genetics and peas and wrinkly peas and shriveled peas and all that good stuff. So I'll review that soon. In the meantime, if you're interested in other educational games, I've got one called Her Story for you right there, and another one called Trekking Through History right there as well. You can check out. In the meantime, have a wonderful week. Take care, happy gaming, go out and learn something about cells or something else, and have a wonderful week. Take care, bye.